misunderstandings about what is karma, misunderstandings about what is duty, misunderstandings about what is meditation, misunderstandings about what path should you take. So the Bhagavad Gita takes in stock all the 4 yogas that are consolidated by Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda seemed to be a neo-Vedantist or reformer, but you see, he wasn't saying anything new. It was all contained here. So the importance of the Bhagavad Gita is this, that it is a practical text. Very often in a scripture, you have to sort out what is sand and what is sugar. And that becomes an arduous process. Now, if you think that the sand is the sugar and get it all mixed up, then you might be a fanatic. You might be a doctrinal person that emphasizes the legalism of a system. This is the law. You must do this. You should do this. For what reason? Because we tell you. You should light a lamp. Why? Because my mother did it, her mother did it, her mother did it. No. At a certain age, an inquiring mind will ask why. So the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita will principally cover the practical aspect of what should you do? What is your duty? This we call karma yoga. That is the attempt to unite the individual entity, the individual spirit, seemingly individual spirit, with the universal spirit by taking all your normal so-called activities, the necessary actions that we have to do. Eating is a necessary action, drinking is a necessary action, sleeping is a necessary action. Talking may not be such a necessary action. So taking all of these things, and in modern terminology, taking your role, your career role, whatever it is, how to make money, how to feed yourself, how to feed your family, these are all practical issues. These are not issues about people withdrawing into a cave somewhere or into a monastery somewhere and meditating. And yet there's a role for meditation also. So only here, of course, and we referred to it also in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a preparation. The 6th chapter is a commentary on the end of the 5th chapter, and it's now to do with meditation. So the whole chapter is the chapter on concentration on meditation, Dhyana Yoga. But all the other chapters were to do with the principle. First, it started with the principle. How do you give somebody strength? How do you give somebody confidence? In difficult situation, you need to make somebody realize you have unlimited strength, enormous potential. Where do we get that reference from? It's because when you delve deeply into the human personality, what you will find there is the entity that we call Atman. Translated quite accurately in English as self. But of course, when we say self, that's not normally what we mean. We mean a physical self or a psychophysical self. We mean a personality. Somebody with a label called this, somebody with a certain set of characteristics, behaviors, and a certain person who categorizes all activities into virtues and vice, good and bad, and so on. But we have to come across a set of people who transcend all of this, what we call pairs of opposites, who are able to not be affected by, on the physical level, hot or cold. On the psychological level, praise or blame. On the virtuous level, good and evil. Virtue and vice, and so on. So, to get into that position requires taking stock of the mental field and finding out what are the disturbances. The whole purpose of meditation, the whole purpose of taking your attention and using it in a detached way, because the method is only twofold. One is steady practice, and the other is detachment. Even in your actions, detaching yourself from the results or the fruits of your actions, not doing anything for any motive, any egoistic motive. Enhancing the quality of purity and nobility and truth and goodness and so on, and harmony, subtle qualities. Then that becomes karma yoga. All the rest is just karma, action, and will have its pain-bearing effects. So, the second chapter in particular will highlight the idea of there's a certain Sankhya Yoga, or what we call Jnana Yoga, certain discernment is necessary in life. We always have to understand that when we look at a human entity, we're looking at a mechanism. We look past the personality and we look at the physical, which is the dominant characteristic of what we see and relate to. We find it's a section of moving parts. Studying anatomy and physiology is very useful. Because when we can easily see a person running, or a person walking, or a person bending, we can see it's not possible without a certain skeletal structure which will accommodate it. Certain bones are meant to bend in a certain way and not in others. Take, for example, ball and socket joint. A hinge joint is not supposed to move as a ball joint is. And surrounding that will be mobilizing ligaments and muscles. And look where the energy comes from. It comes from food, cleverly converted into an electrical kind of energy, where you find various components of phosphorus and nitrogen and hydrogen and oxygen all combining, and some molecules being released to release energy, so we get an adenosine triphosphate going to adenosine diphosphate, and the energy lost in that is the energy gained in the cells and makes for mobility. All of this mechanism is a wonder, but it is merely a mechanism. There are other mechanisms we can have a wonder at, human-made. For example, in Germany and California today now, and likely to be everywhere, hydrogen vehicles are being manufactured. In Germany, I read, there's a hydrogen chain running on what? Essentially, water. Yeah. So you put hydrogen. Now, the difficulty is, in large stocks of hydrogen gas are also pollutants, but I hope they'll figure that one out. So hydrogen gas is put into a tank, and if you put it in a train, it will last for about 600 miles. One filling. And filling takes about, not long, 3 minutes maybe. So what the hydrogen does is its action sucks in oxygen, makes water, and in that hydrolysis process, energy is released, charges up batteries, and so things are kept mobile in that sense, energetic in that way. So these are marvelous constructions of human ingenuity. Why? Because the human brain itself is much more involved and complex, much more intricate. And we still are marveling and wondering at how the brain itself works. The Vedanta philosophy will use a construction, constructed from the Samkhyas, that says that actually there is a subtle body also. There is a series of bodies that go inward. And if we just take the outward movement and take that seriously, then we've missed the idea, we've misunderstood that there is a real person separate from a mechanism. There is a real person separate from a mechanism. This principle is taught so that you can get some kind of discrimination or discernment about what is what. If that doesn't happen, then what will become of the mind? The mind will be disturbed. It is cravings that disturb the mind. So before we even sit down and get to that inner still place that we call Atman through meditation, the cravings have to be gone. The mind has to be steady and settled in the first place. We have to deal with all of these disturbance and difficult waves that we can call cravings. Now, the word craving is a very dramatic word. It's much more than a desire. Yeah. A craving is some energetic urge. It has more urgency than a mere desire. You can categorize things as a mere whim or a desire, but craving means I have to have that. There's a kind of urgency that gives a momentum to action about it. And it unsettles the whole mind because it means I'm dissatisfied. And you can use a deep psychology for it. But the deepest psychology is what Sri Krishna applies. Saying, actually, let me try and change the way you look at things. You're looking at things from a limited world. You're looking at things from a world perspective that is centered around you and others. So it's quite accurate to what I said last week, that Krishnamurti is somebody I quoted in synthesis. And I said that any sense of individuality or individual identification based on race, based on gender, based on creed, based on nationality or ethnicity or any of these things are all recipes for violence. And violence is our most cherished value. Why should it be a violent thing? It's because we only have these alternative reactions. If I put myself in a bubble with my self-interest at heart and relate everything to everything else, I soon realize or think that there is a threat against me, or some defense mechanism has to be made. So I have the opportunity of either moving toward it and attacking it, aggressively attacking it. That's violence. Or I have the opportunity of withdrawing from it, which means the other person will chase me, that's also violence. Or I can yield, I submit, please take me prisoner, a slave, that's also violence. Whichever way you look at it, violence is inferred. Whenever you take this aspect of individuality, it's from the sense of individuality that we feel an internal incompleteness, and then we feel these cravings. So on a chapter on meditation, we don't start off with, please sit like this, please put your eyes like this, and so on. No, it doesn't start like that at all. It starts with something much, much more fundamental. So this is the beginning of the chapter on Dhyana Yoga, meditation, with that background involved in it. And so the first subject that is taken up, really, is the subject of, again, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is equivalent to sannyas. When we think of sannyas, we think of taking monastic vows and all that, or living a hermit life. No, that's not what it's meant. It means giving up the fruits of your activities, being disconnected in a motivational sense from any of the effects of your actions, because they are disturbing and they arise from cravings. So before we even discuss what is a suitable environment to sit for meditation, can you please give me a quick 10-minute lesson on meditation? And that's good enough. And now I'm set for life. In an age where everything should be quick, this is not how we approach it. Nor is it how Patanjali in Patanjali Yoga Sutras approaches it either. There are echoes here also in Katha Upanishad, which also tells us this, that you cannot really get peace of mind. You cannot get all of that unless you meditate. You cannot meditate unless you have controlled the mind and the senses. So it begins then with the Lord Krishna as a reformer, saying, let us get away from all these doctrines and dogmas. Let's make a practical religion. Now, I started by saying, as a kind of a side comment, that the idea was for the national curriculum of Ireland, the junior level religious education, was to only have 3 religions represented. And it took some hard pressing and convincing, not on my part necessarily, but on others' parts, to include what he called the Dharmic religions. That is, Buddhism and Hinduism.
What did you call it?
Dharmic. So these are the 2 religions. Otherwise, that mindset would have been stuck there.
Sorry, why is it called that? What does that mean?
Because it's all centered, Buddhism and Hinduism is centered around Dharma. Alternatively, Hinduism is all called Sanatana Dharma, an eternal law, or an eternal, Dharma really means the thing that sustains everything in a sense of harmony, that which knits everything together harmoniously. You see, the whole universe runs on Dharma. And we multiply it and say there are laws, physics laws. Now, I don't know if they're eternal laws, but some physicists often think that they are eternal laws, which in itself is curious, because if those physicists are in any way agnostic or atheistic, then they overthrew the lawmaker and just retained the laws. The lawmaker was eternal, that's all right, do away with him, but the laws are eternal, and that seems a little irrational, but never mind about that. So, in this process, as part of the study and part of the practice in the schools, one question was there about studying the scriptures belonging to the Abrahamic religions. It was a requirement. And it was an alternative requirement, either Christian scriptures or Judaistic scriptures or Islamic scripture, Quran. Then I said, but what about Hindu scriptures? Oh, that's far too complicated. If you do that, then everybody will want. I said, who's everybody? You only have 5 religions. So 2 religions are left out. So then I pointed out that the shortest and most profound of all these scriptures, the one that gets to a practical essence, will be the Bhagavad Gita. And since this is part of the Prasthanatraya, the threefold scriptural basis, the canon of Hinduism, all the Upanishads, the philosophical portion of the Vedas, are somehow knitted together in a bouquet called the Celestial Song, Bhagavad Gita. And then Brahma Sutras are there, very abstract, systematical, systematizing sutras, which systematize the thoughts of the Upanishads. So why don't we take the practical portion? Very easy. Oh, we have to get books. Oh, you can get it on the net. Oh, I have a book for you.
Oh,
yeah, I have that small
excellent.
Small one that you talked about. Yeah. I had one left over. So I kept
the silvery one.
I kept it aside.
Excellent.
So anyhow, that is the background. Generally, overall, to the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that it's not just a scripture, but is a practical scripture. And there is no sawdust in it. There's no sand-sugar mixture. It's all sweetness. It's all the sugar. It's all things that you can eat and use. And so we shouldn't ignore the systematic presentation of this Bhagavad Gita that has happened over the last several months. And so my first question to you really was, what did you learn from it? What did you get from it? So it requires getting down to the practical thing. The first 6 chapters, or the first 5 chapters at least, are dedicated to this Karma Yoga. You cannot have this Dhyana Yoga without it. And so, the Blessed Lord said, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Anashrita karma param karyam karma karotiha sasamyasi sa cha yogi cha na nirajnye na cha kriyaha. The Blessed Lord said, he who discharges his duty without seeking its fruit, he is the sannyasa. Clearing up forever whether somebody should go into retreat, hide away, withdraw, and in a sense promote violence because others will come and chase you, or demand you to participate somehow in the life that you ran away from. So neither Lord or Arjun thinks that sannyas is this kind of person. Both are military people, both are actively engaged in administration and warfare. So he is the yogi. The sannyasin is the real yogi, the real person who is not only the adherent, not only the disciplined practitioner, seeking a kind of unity of existence, but the one of great concentration of mind. Not he who is without sacred fire, without rites. We put it in this modern context that we were discussing earlier. Not he who has no religious ritual. In the old days, of course, the sacred fire was the only ritual available. And there were certain rites around that, no doubt. Those rites were also significant in a person's upbringing and life milestones in a person's life, and they are still there. All we have done now is we have adopted the rites and made them more prominent than the actual fire sacrifice. So I think people in general have a misunderstanding, misconception of what is sannyas, because the sannyas should not shoulder any responsibility, that he should not be a drone. And that seems to be the prevalent notion. No, that's an error. See, lighting a fire that we mentioned is a symbol of performing yajna, sacrifice. But generally, you see, people do this and do some rite for some result, either here or hereafter. You ask many people, are you religious? Yes. What is your goal? Heaven is your goal. In other words, an afterlife of some kind. That is the reward of your meritorious deeds here. But still, this is not altruistic. Still, this is not pure. Still, that has that selfish motive involved in it. So no person should ever discard action. It's just what kind of action. And you will find, when you carefully examine it, that every individual has an individual role to play, like a jigsaw piece being fitted in. This is what we mean by dharma, of course. One of the meanings is that it's knitted together well. It's well designed in a sense. So then the next question is, what is the relationship between karma, sannyas, that is giving up action or certain types of action, fruits of action really, and karma yoga, and it requires further clarification. Yam samnyasam iti prahu yogam tam veti pandava nahya samnyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kashana. So what that says really, know that as yoga, O Pandava is addressed as Arjuna, which is called sannyasa, for none becomes a yogi without renouncing sankalpa. What is sankalpa? Sankalpa, that is renouncing this wheel, this intention that has an egocentric motivation to it, putting yourself at the center of all action. The selfish motive behind all action is what we call sankalpa. And literally with a cycle. So it gets you caught up, just as in a routine person who gets bored with life. There's a kind of sankalpa. What is wrong with you? Oh, I wish life would be more exciting. What do you do? Well, I go to work in the morning. And then what? Then I get tired. And then what? I come home. And then what? I have some supper. And then what? I go to bed. And then what? I get up in the morning. And so it just repeats itself. No enthusiasm in life whatsoever. At some stage or other, a person gets some kind of excitement about wants to jolt themselves out of their normal, boring routine and rhythm. This we call midlife crisis. Very often. But even midlife crisis won't do it, because you're still caught up in a misunderstanding about things. As long as there's egocentricity, then all the things and results and effects around you will all be imprisoning, so to speak. You're making a prisoner of yourself, like weaving a cocoon around yourself and not appearing outside of it. So how does sannyasa augment yoga? So, Aro uksha mune yogam karma karanam uchyate yoga rudhyasya tasyeva samaha karanam uchyate. Karma is said to be the means of wit, the means of the one of calm mind, the one gotten rid of all cravings, and this then is called muni. So, Aruroksha muni, there's silent person. No need to express, no need to speak, always content, always attuned to the inner divinity. So who seeks to attain to yoga, serenity is said to be the means when he has attained to yoga. So what does that mean? serenity. This is now referring very directly to meditation. Deep meditation is the yogi's personal activity, in which he delights in the sublimity of the self. So serenity is the foremost of all the accomplishments of the yogi. When you sit down in so-called meditation, you have already set the preconditions on stage for a serene mind. How do you attain that? You attain that through vigorous activity in a detached way, in a non-egocentric way. That calms the mind and gets rid of all the cravings. When you sit down for meditation, no cravings are there. So what are the tremendous rules in meditation? No first-person singular, no future tense. Anything that has first-person singular and future tense in meditation is no longer meditation. It's no longer serene. So people ask, will you teach me meditation? I ask why. They say, to get peace of mind. What's my standard reply? Please go and get peace of mind first, and then you can meditate.
Is that saying, so to have a calm enough mind for meditation is kind of suggesting that you need to perform karma yoga all the time? Yeah. And then it says about vigorous. Is that suggesting, I might just misunderstood, is that then suggesting like before meditation going for a run but not having any?
No, the condition, what is the meditation there for? Is to make sure that all the waves of the mind get nicely stilled. We do that not by directly stilling anything, but creating some good preconditions. But you see, 99.9% of your day is all kinds of other things. And anxiety impinges on it, and desires, passions, cravings impinge on it, dissatisfaction impinges on it, doubt impinges on it, temptations impinge on it. So all of the whole mind gets disturbed with all these variations of difficulties in the so-called waking world. We have to learn to deal with them in situ, as they arise. You have to have some practical formula. All these other chapters have been giving you that practical formula. You have to look at things in a certain way. You have to revalue the world around you, and then make sure that you put all the full effort of your concentration, means all the full energy that you have, physical, mental, everything else, into that unit activity, either as an expression of a universal energy that we call God, moving through all beings, or as an individual deity, your personal ideal of God, whom you worship and offer all your activities to. So all activities then become a worship. This is essentially the purport of Karma Yoga. Every action is binding, except those done for yajna. This is something we studied previously. So it's not the kind of yajna or sacrifice where you light a fire and you make some offerings with the idea of getting some result. No. The yajna in this case is Karma Yoga. It means doing something as an offering to the Divine Lord. Then you may ask, how can we easily do it? Since we have to focus on so many different activities in the day, is it possible to always keep the mind tuned in? Usually Ramakrishna's example, it would be like the turtle who always has its attention on the eggs in the sand on the bank. See? Or fix your mind. Fix your mind, this phrase is used so many different times in this Bhagavad Gita. And so Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Purnananda also used to say it. It's like playing a game, as a child does, catching hold of a pole and spinning around. Don't let go of the pole. Spin round. But as you see, it's orientated around a central axis. The axis should be a central axis in your life. That central axis in your life, in religious terminology, is nothing more than the divine, or God, or your most cherished idea of that, so that becomes your constant companion. Now that brings then to a quotation I use very often, Joel Goldsmith. What is meditation? He's talking of devotional meditation. That is the same as practicing the presence of God. In an intimate way, we call this meditation. The Joga also says, what is meditation? A song of gratitude. Look at this, a song. Some inward movement is a song, a joyful movement, a song of gratitude that God is here, God is now, God is love. What a beautiful sentiment. God is here, God is now, God is love. So when you feel that, then there becomes a difference. Now, there may be some misunderstanding then, of course. So if we now, in meditation terms, get into a state of what you call continuous concentration, continuous attunement, called samadhi, then is that the highest? No, because we only get jnana from it, knowledge. So Sri Ramakrishna uses this example. When you start your spiritual life, you start off with an element of discernment, sorting things out carefully, mapping your life out in such a way that it has a good direction, and keeping in mind always the fact that this life is transient. So with all of this in mind, you have the capacity to employ viveka, discernment, and sort out what is permanent, what is impermanent, what is useful, what is not useful. In this way, it's like seeing milk from a distance. Or having heard milk, not seeing, having heard about milk. There is such thing as milk. Oh. But the next stage is what we call jnana, that we actually see the milk. And then finally, vijnana, we taste the milk. Now that tasting gives us the blissful experience. And it's not just in those three divorced sections. It's not as if we do this and then there's a line. They merge, and there are in-between areas of growth in between that, so that we get more and more of the taste as we go more towards vijnana. So, still it doesn't mean, of course, the very highest doesn't mean let's leave the world off. There's a great mistake that is made by non-dualists primarily, who say that we have to remove Maya. Of course, they're right in the sense that Maya, if we mean ignorance, that of course has to go. But can we ourselves remove it? Or does the dawn of knowledge break through the cloud, if you want to use that analogy? So that's the difference. So how active should we be before meditation? Well, your whole waking life, if you don't orientate in the correct way and deal with things in situ, if necessary, blame and shout at God in situ. Otherwise, when you sit for meditation will be a series of argumentative dialogues and complaints and throwing your fist at the Lord. So no need to do that. So make your life 99.9% of your normal, so-called normal life orientated toward a peaceful mind, a tranquil mind, a satisfied mind. And the only way to do that is take the cravings off. How do you do that? You do that by having a better idea, reevaluation of the whole what we call life. And putting God there, seeing God there. And this comes out in this chapter as an effect. So that when we sit for meditation, none of these things crowd in. And as we know, the disturbance in meditation would be, to some extent, personality-driven. So some people, that's why doing the Enneagram is so important. Some people will say, oh, I can't meditate. Why? Because I have so many worries. Sitting, I'm doing nothing. I should be doing something. So they get impatient and get up. And they have to learn a certain type of meditation, what we call quiet-centered meditation. Sitting there and being loved, or bathing in divine grace and goodness, which is available. Sitting in the Lord's presence without anything to do necessarily, just bathing there, tuning in, appreciating. That's not to say we don't use the full capacity of our imagination, or we don't construct a journey in meditation. We do. another type of person, the emotions get disturbed. So when they sit for meditation, they may have adopted a technique whereby they focus on all the feelings that are going in and flooding the mind. Well, if you meditate on that and get hooked up with that, what you will do, you'll be the eternal pessimist. You'll drag yourself down into the depths of depression. And so, to present your feelings and practice the presence of God in an intimate way in meditation. And then what about those who are living in the head? They sit down and all the traffic comes in. What about this? What about that? What about the other things? And before they know it, they've gone off at multiple tangents. It's to have the capacity to take that and focus it in a certain direction. Direct it with the full creativity of your imagination. Take yourself on a pilgrimage journey, everybody. And the key is there in the Upanishads. All the Upanishads tell us is how to go from the outside to the inside and to go from the inside to the outside. This inward-outward journey is what we call meditation. Until we get accustomed to our home, to our natural residential place where we ourselves reside. So we'll continue then. Now there are some quotations here, as currently. So Manu would tell us, desires and doing are all selfish motives. And then we have another quotation from Shanti Parva. Shanti Parva declares, O desire, I know where from you take your origin. You are born of Sankalpa. I shall refuse to make Sankalpa of you. Annihilation then is your lot. And then Sri Ramakrishna has this to say. Such Ishvara cannot be perceived in that mental firmament which is disturbed by the gale of desires. So the long and the short of it is all your objects, all your events and scenes within your normal waking life, so-called, should be revalued so that there's no desire within it. There's all just glory. So going on then, udred atmanatmanam natanmam avasadayat atmeva hyatmano bandhu atmeva ripu atmanaha. Let a man or let a person raise himself by his own self. Let him not debase himself, for he is himself his friend. He is himself his own enemy. You see, we tend to think that external people are our friends or enemies, and we make a classification like that. That person likes me, that person doesn't like me. But it's all just the cravings which are your enemies. That's all. And cravings come from a sense of ego. So if we were to theologically discuss Satan, do you believe in Satan and so on, as some of my theological discussions have taken that turn because people think in this way, then, Satan is a personalized version of egoistic desires. And when we fail to tune in to the glory of the Lord, what we are doing is we get all kinds of howling noises. Just as when you try to tune a radio in to a certain broadcast and don't quite catch it, you'll get all kinds of weird howling noises and background interference. So better to do the tuning, constantly make the attempt to tune the mind in, tune the mind in, tune the mind in, with all the tools that we have at our disposal. So you have the capacity to raise yourself up, not to project it on an unsuspecting imaginary figure called Satan, or to blame God. When things go well, we take credit. And then when things don't go so well, we shake our fists at God and become angry. So this is our normal way of behaving. It's very abnormal, of course, but that's how we do it. There's that famous story, I think I told you here before, if not I told the children, about the Brahmin who killed the cow because he was a keen gardener. And he got out of it theologically. What a great sin it is for a priest, for a Brahmin, to kill a cow out of anger. He said, no, it wasn't me. Since the Lord Indra is the Lord of the hands, he himself did it. It's his responsibility. The simple folk understood, all right, he's a Brahmin, he's a learned man, he must know what he's talking about. So he got out of it like that. But then he was caught, you see. So a heavenly messenger came and said, or Indra himself may have come and said, who planted this beautiful garden? He says, I did that. I see. All right. So I'm the Lord of your hand. I didn't do it. No, I did. And who killed the cow? So you have to take personal responsibility. And what we often say is, you see, that from 9 years old, a child should learn the sense of independence. They should learn their own responsibility. Take responsibility yourself. Raise yourself up. It's a very powerful statement. Take your attention and raise it to the highest level. Don't leave it and allow it to be dragged down to the lowest levels. And we see when this happens. We see levels of regression, levels of progression in our daily experiential life. We see this. We can note it for ourselves. It's good. We don't repress anything. But when we see the mind going down, let us then take our attention and steer it. And the best way is preventative medicine. To always keep the mind tuned, so that in a moment where the mind is not particularly occupied, the spiritual habit comes in, the habit of tunement comes in, God comes in, the thought of God immediately comes in. So no one courts enmity, but most people don't know that they're dragging themselves down. It's not somebody else or something else that's dragging themselves down. And similarly, it's up to you to raise yourself up. You take personal responsibility for it. This knocks out all understandings, or misunderstandings, I should say, of fatalism. There's no fatalism in this. You take personal responsibility, and you yourself raise yourself or drag yourself down. It's entirely up to you. In doing this, again, you're your own best friend or your own worst enemy. And when the mind drags down, we don't think of it in that way. But dragging yourself down to the gutter is not doing yourselves any favors. Pandu atmatmanas tasya yenatmeva tmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrude vartitatvai Shatruvat, yes, like an enemy. To him who has conquered his base self by the divine self, his own self is the friend. But to him who has not subdued the self meaning the superficial self, the body-mind complex, the personality, the direction of the mind, the attention, the cravings that vacillate within the mind. His own self acts as his enemy. It's a repetition, pretty much, of what was said previously. Both bondage and freedom are in the minds of men. I am a liberated soul. I am the child of God. None can bind me. If one can assume this attitude with firm conviction, one becomes free. Let's say it again. Both bondage and freedom are in the minds of men. Both. I am liberated soul. I am the child of God. None can bind me is an attitude we can all adopt. And if one can assume this attitude with firm conviction, one becomes free. If a man bitten by a venomous snake strongly suggests to himself that there is no poison, he falls no prey to the bite, says Sri Ramakrishna. And then we're going to do the last one here. What is the benign good that the self-emulating yogi can do to himself? This answer comes. Jitatmanaha prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shito nashtu sukatu keshu tata manupam manayo. The self-disciplined and serene man's supreme self is constant in all his pairs of opposites. In cold and heat, when described in a physical way, in pleasure and pain, as described in a mental way, and also honor and dishonor in terms of your egoistic self. These fluctuations in nature are always there, heat and cold, praise and blame. You can see it very easily. You can take stock of yourself in this context. When somebody insults you, how long do you carry it? You see, we were discussing the other week. Somebody does something to you on the road. Of course, the first mistake we make is we think that shouting at the person from the car will be audible in the other car. It's not. It won't. The other car won't hear it. Yeah? But we do that, isn't it? Somebody's in front in a car and they're a little slow turning, and you're saying, "Oh, turn." They can't hear you, of course. Even if they look in the mirror, they can't really see what you're mouthing. From their point of view, oh, he's singing a nice song. And that makes them even slower. So, these pairs of opposites are there. And it's the self-disciplined, look at this, the self-disciplined and serene man. So that's what is required. Self-discipline is what is required. Serenity is the result. That Supreme Self is constant in all kinds of conditions. There's this idea in 6 treasures which are put there as a condition for students. And one would be tiksha, forbearance. We can put it in different language. What cannot be cured has to be endured. A certain philosophical attitude comes in. And when you know that there's no body, you're detached from the body, then literally hot and cold don't affect it. Literally. They affect it when you identify yourself with the body. You stand in cold water. Oh, immediately there's a bracing effect. And then you can get into the idea, we're standing there, I'm not this body actually. This body is just a mechanism. And when I identify with it, then I identify with the skin. When I identify with the skin, then I feel the temperature. But when I no longer do that, even just for a split second, you find there's no sensation, hot or cold. None of these occur. So the constancy of the yogi has to be adopted, emulated, and we'll find the example of it. We'll pick this up next week. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.